It's true. Elon Musk is making his way back home, and it's not here on Earth. Recently, the founder of SpaceX officially confirmed that he is an alien and he's building a giant rocket ship to take him back to his home planet. In his usual manner, Musk has shared his unexpected news on Twitter. It was a joke, of course, but the truth is that SpaceX has assembled and fully fueled a Starship aiming for Mars. Pre-flight preparations and training were successful, and the last thing to do is launch Starship into space. When will the launch take place? What other important missions are scheduled for 2023? And everything else you've wanted to know about this in today's video. "2023 should be a record-setting year for space launches. The Vulcan heavy lift launch vehicle from United Launch Alliance will debut this year, and it's supposed to deliver the Astrobotics Peregrine commercial lunar lander to the moon. Boeing's Starliner spacecraft, a direct competitor to Musk's Crew Dragon, is going to send astronauts to orbit for the first time under a NASA contract. There's also more impressive projects. This year, the European Space Agency is launching Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer mission. The goal is to observe Jupiter and 3 of its moons. It's possible that the ice crust on the surface might be covering oceans of liquid water. The exploration device will study these moons and assess their habitability potential. The Indian Space Research Organization is planning to launch its own mission this year, which will attempt to deliver a lander and rover to the moon, and this is their second attempt. The first has failed. Japan will send into orbit the X-RISM satellite to study the structure of the universe, including dark matter and the active galactic nuclei, all with X-ray technology. Besides X-RIM, the Japanese are planning to launch the Smart Lander for investigating the moon, or SLIM, to test the soft precision landing technology. This spring, Rocket Labs is going to launch the first ever private mission to Venus. A small electronic launch vehicle will probe the upper atmosphere in the altitude range between 60 and 45 kilometers, but there will be no landing. China's also stepping up to the challenge. This December, the plans are to launch the Zhoneshane telescope to study the universe. It's going to be equipped with optical tools and be able to detect ultraviolet light. The Zhonshane's 2.5 gigapixel camera is expected to image up to 40% of our sky over the 10 years it's in orbit. But few people know these missions or look forward to them. The world's attention is riveted to the Starship's first launch. Starship is considered Elon Musk's magnum opus and his most important creation, which will change the way we regard the availability of spaceflight. The system consists of 2 main stages, the massive Super Heavy booster and the Starship spacecraft itself. Both stages are designed to be reusable. Recently, the giant Mechazilla launch tower assembled the 120-meter Starship for its full-scale launch tests. And then the rocket was disassembled with the same chopsticks. Well, at least that's what they jokingly call them. But first things first. What did the test launch involve? Well, the spacecraft and launch vehicle were fully loaded with over 4,500 tons for fuel for the first time. Then there was a full launch rehearsal, or so as it's called, a wet dress rehearsal. It included lots of procedures that are mandatory for launch preparation, including the countdown. Everything went smoothly on the first attempt, although the engines were off during testing. Actually, the Starship stages were disassembled again precisely for engine checks. The ship is equipped with 6 Raptor engines, while the launch vehicle has 33 of these. The second stage has successfully tested all 6 of its engines during static fire tests, but the maximum number of the first stage engines launched at the same time so far was only 14. So what's next? Once Starship successfully tests all 33 engines, the last thing for SpaceX to do is getting launch clearance. Only then the rocket will need to set off on its first mission from Starbase, Texas. According to Musk's optimistic estimates, the flight is planned for late February, but a more realistic forecast says March. With all that being said, let's not forget that NASA and SpaceX are going to fly the Starship human landing system to the moon later this year, and this will be the first spacecraft to land on Earth's moon in a new history of space exploration. First, an unmanned version of the system will travel to the moon, and in 2024 or 2025, Starship will deliver the Artemis program astronauts there. As reported, the preparation of all systems is on schedule, and moreover, NASA officials admit all the module parts meet or even exceed their requirements. NASA chose SpaceX to perform the direct landing of humans on the moon's surface using the Orion spacecraft and bring them back to the ship. But before that, SpaceX will launch and fill the mission's fuel storage into Earth's orbit. Also, during their stay on the moon, the astronauts will live and engage in research on board Starship. To get to the surface, the astronauts will have to use a special elevator designed by SpaceX. Let us remind you that NASA's lunar program can boast some progress. The Orion spacecraft, a part of the Artemis mission, has recently returned to Earth, having been tested on unmanned missions. The spacecraft has entered the atmosphere, disengaged from the service module, and successfully performed a water landing. However, it had 2 long power outages during the mission, whose reasons are still unknown. We've already told you about 6 technologies that NASA is developing for both lunar missions and interplanetary travel, including to Mars, so check the link in the info card. But back to Starship. The spacecraft has a busy schedule. It was supposed to orbit the moon this year with a Japanese billionaire on board, but it's most likely going to be postponed till next year, or maybe even 2025. The timing will depend on the success of the first flight around Earth. The mission profile is as follows. A tandem of Starship and Super Heavy's first stage will launch from SpaceX's Starbase spaceport. In 171 seconds after launching, Super Heavy will disengage from the spacecraft, perform a roll program, and land in the Gulf of Mexico. As for Starship, it'll reach enough speed to enter a low Earth orbit and make a suborbital flight around Earth. Near Hawaii, it'll activate its engines and enter the atmosphere. If all goes as planned, the prototype will land in the ocean about 100 kilometers off the northwest coast of the Kauai Island. The total flight duration should be 90 minutes. A total of 5 Starship mega rockets will be built at Starbase in 2023. Fully assembled and ready to launch, at least that's the plan. What could get in the way? Well, SpaceX is more than capable of quickly assembling 5 spacecraft and 5 giant boosters. The pace of construction we witnessed with earlier prototypes is impressive. Nevertheless, to start serial production, the engineers need to make sure that the spacecraft's design won't change anymore. And that depends on, but is not limited to, the success of the first proper flight. Even if Starship ticks all the task boxes as planned without any failures, there's no guarantee that Elon won't find something else to complain about and tinker with. Musk is ambitious and doesn't follow conventional logic or rules. Only his standard is his own vision of how things should be. And maybe that's why he's so successful. And yet, why 5 Starships exactly? Well, the reason is the following. After a long and painful trial, the Federal Aviation Administration has finally completed an environmental inspection of the SpaceX Starbase facilities in Texas and allowed a maximum of 5 Starship orbital launches per year. Starship's orbital launch license, which hasn't yet been issued, could impose additional restrictions, and the second Starship site in Florida, currently under construction, is likely to be approved for orbital launches after Starship proves its relative safety, which will take 1 to 2 years. And given that no Super Heavy lift launch vehicle in history has ever made 5 flights in its first launch year, even that amount of mega rockets can be excessive. But SpaceX's fully reusable system is designed to send at least 100 tons into low Earth orbit, which drastically reduces launch costs. The latter is also facilitated by the fact that upon undocking with the spacecraft, instead of landing on the pad, the Starship's first stage should literally fall into the arms of that very Mechazilla tower. Do you think that all of these plans from Elon are actually going to come to fruition? Let us know in the comments, like the video, and join us over on Telegram. There's many more interesting things to come.